Hi, welcome to this first edition of the Chamber Chatter. I'm Dr. Robert Moss, president of the Springtown Chamber of Commerce. The goal of bringing you this information is to try to help all of our local small businesses as we battle this COVID-19 issue. Today on the line, we're going to have Monica Kirk CPA answering some useful questions about the PPP loan, how you can try to hold on to some cash during these processes, as well as she talks about the changing in the date for filing your federal income taxes. So hopefully you find this information useful. If you have other topics that you'd like to hear some information about, please contact the Chamber office at 817-220-7828. Thank you. Welcome. We have Monica Kirk, CPA, and Amy Walker, our Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm Robert Moss, current President of the Chamber of Commerce. So today we wanted to bring Monica on just to talk about the PPP loan and maybe some other tips that she can give small business owners as we're all kind of struggling right now. Maybe best practices, how to, stash that money aside, how to document. We've talked about, how you should document, how you spend that money, so then that way it's, forgiven as much as possible. So, Monica?
Okay, so my name is Monica Kirk, and I have an office here in Springtown. I grew up in Springtown and graduated from high school out here, and then I graduated from the University of Texas in Arlington with my bachelor's degree in accounting and my master's degree in taxation. And then I am licensed certified public accountant through the Texas State Board of Public Accountancy. So I've had my office open since about 2013. And I have been in public accounting for quite a few years prior to that, and I had probably 15 years of corporate accounting prior to that as well. So I'm pretty familiar with the struggles that people are going through right now. I've seen a lot of downturns in the businesses and the different industries. So the big thing right now that's the hot topic for everybody is the PPP loan that has hit back in early April. The first round was focused more towards the partnerships and corporations and things like that really held payroll expenses. So with that, they were seeking out their banks who could do SBA lending, and that's the key thing, is to find the right bank that can do that lending. 95% of the banks that can do the lending do require that you be a customer of theirs. So there may be a potential that you have to change banks in order to make this happen. So just be open to that possibility, and you may find a new banker in the end. So, but through that process, I found that the clients have leaned on us a lot to help with the documentation that they were having to provide to their bankers. And the majority of what that was your quarterly 941 report. Some banks required your annual 940. And then they wanted to see your annual payroll report so that we could do some averaging and multiplying by the proper factors for that. So a lot of those got funded before the money ran out. And then of recent, on Monday, they released the new funding to help with the self-employed individuals who kind of got left out in that first round because those individuals don't necessarily have payroll for themselves or for anybody else. They do a lot of subbing out and stuff. So with that round, we're seeing a new struggle as far as what they're having to provide to the banks. And previously, you weren't required to file your 2019 tax return. You weren't required to file any of that information with them. They just wanted to see financial records from the business. But now we're finding that the banks are requiring a Schedule C out of their individual tax returns to be filled out. And they expect that Schedule C be what is filed with your, your tax return. So it's a little bit of a struggle because a lot of people aren't prepared for that at the moment to have that in completion. So we've been doing the best that we can. Clients are calling. We're at least getting the best data that we can from them and filling out the Schedule Cs on their behalf and getting that over to them so that they can get that stuff filled out. But the process just started yesterday. We anticipate the money to run out rather quickly in this round because there are a lot of people that are needing this funding. So just getting the funding is probably the biggest struggle at the moment in getting your stuff in on time. But we are helping our clients through that at no additional cost. We feel like that's the least that we can do in our services. You will find that a lot of people are charging for those additional services because they are very time consuming. But for our clientele, we opted not to do that. We would much rather see them survive than think over some fees for accountants. So That's kind of where we are on the PPP side. There is a lot of documentation that's going to be required in the process to evaluate whether you're going to have a potential of loan forgiveness. And that's kind of the ultimate goal, is getting this money as a potential loan, but getting it forgiven in 100% capacity if possible. So the requirement is that 75% of this loan be spent truly on payroll costs. And payroll costs being your gross payroll and your Texas Workforce Commission costs. Those are the two things out of payroll that you can pay out of this. And then the other 25% can be spent on very particular things like mortgage interest, not the principal, your utilities, which is things like your electric, your water, your gas, your landlines, specifically not cell phones, and your internet. So those are all pieces of that you can pay. There's other things in there that that you can reimburse for, but they're very, very specific. And we find that those categories are the biggest ones that people are struggling through right now. There is another piece listed in utility that we're still waiting for some very clear guidance on, and it says transportation. When the self-employed people came out with their guidance on Monday, in that transportation was kind of looked at as fuel costs. Because I mean, you are having to go all over the place. So there's still a little bit of grayness in that area as to really whether they mean the fuel in your vehicles or not. But at this point, from what they released recently, it's looking like that's what it's going to be. So the banks aren't necessarily agreeing on that at this point because they're still waiting for more clear guidance for them. So it's ultimately going to come back to what that bank is going to agree to in order for your loan forgiveness. But, sorry, I lost you there for a second. So in the documentation process, we always recommend our clients open a separate bank account for these PPP funds to be placed into. It provides you with better tracking, and it's not getting commingled with your daily operational funds. So just opening that separate bank account is going to do a lot for you in being able to track exactly what you're doing with that. So we've seen some clients will go as far as getting checks printed for that account, and that's fine, but the printing costs of buying those checks is not deductible from that loan piece. That's a normal operating expense. Others, like myself, I was using my regular bank, and that's who I went with on this loan. And so I just have where I can just transfer funds through. But the ultimate deal is your documentation in this process. We recommend our clients to keep a completely separate file for all of this and be very meticulous in what they're doing. So every time I make a transfer or a client writes a check from that fund, we make sure that we notate it on that document as to what it's for. And then we have backup. We have a payroll report that attaches to that, or we have a utility bill that we paid for that, whatever the case may be. And even the employer's portion of medical insurance is deductible in that. So as we're paying those costs, we're making sure that we're documenting all of that on that transfer or that check that we're using, and then we're putting a copy of that bill that we're actually paying in there. And we're just kind of keeping all those records because the banks are just kind of in a wait and see at this point. They don't really know how those things are going to come to them and exactly how extensive it's going to be required of them. So right now we're just saying more documentation is better than none. And so that's the best route we can go at this point.
So I know you're waiting on kind of feedback, but is the onus going to be on the banks to then say, yeah, this loan part is forgiven, or is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, so far it's going to be coming down to the bank. I feel like they're going to have some sort of guidance from the SBA because this is really the funds from them and it's not the bank that's being held accountable for this. But at this point, it's ultimately going to come down to the bank unless we get further notifications on that. And that would require the SBA coming in and doing audits.
Monica, we just had a teleconference call with Kay Granger's office and Phil King and a gentleman from North Carolina, a representative out there. He didn't bring up the issue about forgiveness, and he said that there should be something coming from the SBA later this week regarding the forgiveness issue.
Yeah, and we're always just on a constant wait and see, and this thing has changed hourly for us in the process of all of this, and it's been quite the scrambling process, but we do anticipate the SBA to really have to step in and give better guidance to the banks because each of these banks is interpreting things a little bit differently, and they're also interpreting it differently from the CPAs that are assisting in the process. So I know I've had some conflict of agreement on certain items with some of these things where, I've got the law sitting in front of me and this is what I'm reading that it says, but the bank says, that's not how we're interpreting that. So there's going to have to be somebody that's going to be that middleman that's going to really step in and account for these things.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that was some of the things that Amy and I heard on that call, just variations in what different banks are requiring versus maybe what the law truly says. So I imagine it's going to be a kind of a wait and see, but I guess best policy is, like you said, is document the heck out of everything, have a paper trail, and if they need it, you've got it, and if not,
yes.
oh well.
And I think the information that you mentioned about having keeping it in a separate bank account, I hadn't heard that before. That seems like it would be very helpful.
Yeah, and that's where we've gone from day one with our clients is this is special money. You do not want to commingle this money and not be able to prove what you did with the money. So by having it in that separate bank account, it really does give you that separation of everything else that you have going on in the business. And, it just seems more logical to handle it in that manner. But not everyone is. Some of the banks aren't even asking people, and they're just depositing it straight into their operating accounts and moving on down the road, which is fine because we can always undo that, open bank accounts, and transfer the exact funds through. So.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how about, I know, the second round, and on the call they discussed it, this E-Tran system that the SBA is running all these loans through. Apparently this thing is just bottlenecked, and so it's not flowing as well. So let's say we go down the road and someone is struggling, they didn't get this loan assistance. Any tips that you can give some of these businesses to cut expenses and maybe keep things afloat?
Yeah, I've been working with clients on a lot of this. The SBA has other loan programs outside of just this potential PPP. There is an EIDL loan that a lot of people
we applied
for before this PPP was ever eligible. So, there's a lot of goodness out there that the SBA offers in different options of these loans. And, they have different notes that attach to those. So I think those are some really good options for people that just really feel like, I just need to get through the hurdle. And I do see that my business is going to pick up. I'm not going to be a business that's going to go away. If you feel like you're a business that's going to go away, that's a whole different ballgame to be playing in. You don't want to take on a loan that you're not going to be able to pay back.
Right.
So, I've talked to other clients. We've discussed reaching out to your lenders. The banks have different options of deferral programs that they're offering for loans and things that you have. Your credit card companies, anybody that you owe money to, they are in a very understanding state right now. Because everyone is struggling and they're going to receive the bailouts of this stuff. So they're going to receive the help from the government that's going to be needed to keep the economy floating. So I've encouraged a lot of my clients to just start reaching out in regards to all of your loans, your utility bills, any of those things that you're struggling with, reach out to them because they're setting up deferral programs. Your mortgages can be deferred very easily. So, there's a lot of options out there and, our clients, I tell them all the time, just call us. If you're struggling with something, call us and let's brainstorm. And sometimes it's a phone call that I can help them through. So but there's so many resources that people just don't think about, especially with these deferrals of payments. They just never really thought, oh my gosh, I could get my car payment deferred or I could get my mortgage deferred for the business or whatever. But all of that stuff is definitely out there and clients are utilizing them constantly right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point is to use you or someone else as a resource because you're dealing with this every day, and we're small business owners just stuck in their own head trash about what's going on, and then you're dealing with 20 of us that have head trash, so you can straighten us out.
Yeah, and we have a lot of different clients that come to the table with different things, and sometimes they're things that maybe would help out another client, and so sometimes we have different aspects to send you down. Just because we've dealt with somebody else that may have had something come up that we thought, oh, maybe that'll work for you.
Sure. Hey, jumping back to the PPP, just came to my thought process here. So there's an 8-week time frame, is that correct? And when does that start, and how are they calculating that?
That 8 weeks starts when you're funded.
Okay.
And so you have 8 weeks to spend the money in full and on the proper regulated items.
Okay. Great. Perfect. Now, how about, so Governor Abbott has said, May 1st, they're starting to kind of open some things up. He's listed a few industries that they're going to start to open up, the malls and retail centers and theaters and things like that. From a financial standpoint, I guess some businesses are going to get an immediate influx of cash depending on what you're doing. But for me in the physical therapy world, we're 30 days out. So we've really had to manage our cash flow. Any other tips for helping businesses such as myself that have a 30 to 60 day, account payable department, how to help manage cash flow or how to maybe speed up that cash coming in?
Sure. There's always, in speeding up the cash, there's always discounts you can offer people. And people will eat up those discounts pretty quickly, especially right now if they can see that they can save a little money by paying you a little bit of a discount. That's going to help them in the end because they know that ultimately I've got to pay this bill and it's due. But if I can negotiate a little bit less that gets some cash in your pocket and makes you happy, then everybody's going to win on that situation. Some people are even returning back to their financial institutions for just a line of credit. A lot of banks will provide you with a small line of credit depending on, how big that bank is and what they deal in. But just that line of credit to just kind of keep the flat cash flow moving, a lot of banks are going to step up and do those things right now because they're going to see that you were stable before this and they realize this is going to come to an end at some point and they're not going to want to lose your business. So they're going to want to see you thrive because they're going to be making money off of you. So that's definitely an aspect to look at is just retroing back to your own bankers and seeing what kind of guidance they can get. And then again, trying to defer as much of those payments of outlay of cash as possible so that you can keep that revenue sitting in your bank account so that you can keep people employed at this point in time, because that's our biggest thing in this economy is just trying to keep people employed. Our unemployment rates are outrageous, and as much as we can help out as possible is going to be in the positive.
I heard something on a podcast the other day that said revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king.
That's right. It absolutely is.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then in terms of, so the government, the IRS has now pushed the tax filing date, forward several months. Anything we need to watch out in particular on that? Obviously, everything happening now will be on next year's taxes, but.
Yeah. Well, first off, the PPP, if you do have this forgiven, this is not taxable income to anyone. This would be recorded in your financial records as tax-exempt income. So it is essentially free money to keep people employed. So that's going to be the biggest understanding that people need to have in these loans. Outside of that, as far as the filing season, it was kind of a blessing for us to have that extension. Had this been a normal tax season, I think things would have went, just fine. But with the influx that people don't understand in our industry that we get from our clients coming to us and trying to get this help, it was overwhelming come March. And so we were really falling behind and we were going to have to be working a lot of hours to make that April 15th deadline. So, and so I know a lot of people out there who were stressing out over just getting their own personal tax returns done and trying to keep their business doors open. So it's been a blessing all around for everyone. And not only did it extend your tax filing deadline, it's also extending your estimated taxes. So your first quarter payments are not due until July 15th, and then they further extended the second quarter to July 15th as well. So your first two estimated tax payments for those that have to pay in will be due on July 15th.
No, I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, the Texas Workforce Commission also extended its filing deadline. It was due this Thursday. They extended that to May 15th. We've gone ahead and gotten all of our clients handled, but that was a little bit of a struggle on the TWC side just because their websites are so bogged down right now with the unemployment rate as high as it is that when we did have to get into some of those systems, it was very hard for us to get in. So they have tried to give us all a little bit of extra time there.
Sure, I know you guys work a lot of hours anyway during this season, so I can imagine.
We do. We've continued working them just like it's a normal April filing, but we got a little diverted over to trying to assist everybody in just keeping their doors open and food on the table and their lights on. So fortunately, a lot of our clientele has been very understanding in that, knowing that, we would have had their tax return done by April 15th, but we have until July now. And we unfortunately really had to struggle with how we handle things, because typically we're a first in, first out kind of situation. But we really had to take a hard look at what do our clients need from us. And the guys that are paying money don't need to give the IRS that money today. So we kind of had to shift our focus to the clients that were losing their jobs and had no source of income, and they needed that refund. So that's really where we moved towards this tax season, was trying to get those people out that were expecting money back from the government to try to keep them floating until all of this blows over. So, hopefully everybody out there can understand those situations. But yeah, those are the biggest guys to try to get handled at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are hurting, and they're struggling, so they probably need that tax refund. Or something we didn't talk about, I know mainly about small business, but the government also was giving out some other voucher checks, right?
Yeah, they had the stimulus payments that they came out with, and that has been a bit of a disaster. Their website is not working very well, and people are struggling trying to get updates. They did an update late last week or over the weekend, and I found that clients that were struggling with it previously are now being able to get information as to where they are in the pipeline of getting that stimulus check, but I still have a lot of clients that can't get any notice off of that website. So, but yeah, they were giving out $1,200 for a single individual under a certain dollar amount. I believe it was $75,000 of income. And then a married couple, as long as you were no more than 150. If you went over 150, it just phased out a portion of it. You didn't get it in full. So a married couple could essentially get $2,400, and then you're getting $500 for every minor child that you've had listed on your tax return. A lot of clients we found were panicking because their 2019 tax return wasn't filed yet, and they didn't know what to do, but that was not a concern. The IRS retroed back to what you filed in 2018, and that's how they calculated your stimulus. The stimulus check is a credit for your 2020 taxes. It will have to be reported on your 2020 tax return. At this point, it's just a matter of reporting it. There isn't any full guidance as far as if any portion of it's going to have to be paid back because it was overcalculated because your 18 and 19 were so different. Right now, our industry is seeing that that's not going to be the case. If you got it, and you're good with it. I did find that we had some clients call that got some erroneous checks, and I'm afraid those will have to be paid back. For instance, we had one that in 18, they were not married and filed separate tax returns. 2019, they were married. Well, they went and gave them the $2,400 off of their 2019 tax return, and then the spouse got an extra $1,200 because her 2018 tax return was filed as a single individual, and they didn't have one for 19 separate. So they ended up with an extra $1,200 that I believe is going to have to be paid back on that situation.
Yeah, so they definitely need a separate bank account to just put that $1,200 off to the side and not.
Yeah, we had a very lengthy discussion about that to just anticipate that you're going to have to give that money back. And I've also had a client call me that her father passed away in 2018 and filed a final tax return, and she got a check for his tax return. So it's not working beautifully. Yeah, it's not working beautifully at all. And a lot of people are still sitting and wondering when they're going to get their check, and they cannot get any information from the IRS's website. Then, of course, you can't call them and talk to anybody. So.
Right. Okay, great. Any other tips or things that you can think of that our small businesses here in Springtown could either benefit from, or recommendations, resources? Are you taking new clients? Can they contact you if they're not a client? How do you recommend people handle that?
Yeah, we are taking new clients. Like I said, we really like focusing on the small business owners. So we're here to help in this community as much as we possibly can. And so they're welcome to call the office. Currently, as you can see behind me, I am not working at the office due to underlying health issues. I am quarantined at home until my medical release. But if they call the office, they can either talk to Daniel. He's the tax manager, the other CPA there in the office. And if he's not available, I am calling everyone back from my cell phone and trying to accommodate this. I'm holding Zoom meetings on a regular basis with clients that just want to see a face, and that's perfectly fine with me. I'm accustomed to being able to handle people in a virtual manner anyway, so that's what I was before I moved into the chamber years ago. So, we're trying to help as much as we can possibly help. And I think the big thing is the community just coming together and helping in every way they can to support each other. So, if you need to dine out, make a drive through to somebody who's, really not seeing that income come through, because I know you've got a lot of small restaurants out there that are suffering right now. So that's, of course, a huge thing. And then another factor is just sitting down with your financial person and looking at your expenses and seeing where can we cut some costs right now that are just really unnecessary, that, we can always bring back when the times get better, but right now it's just excessive. And so it's just dialing it back to the time that we're in right now and trying to find that happy place.
Okay, great. And Monica, what's your office number? What's the best number for them to call?
Our office number is 817-523-2100. And they're always welcome to email me at Monica, MONICA, at Monica Kirk, AIRK, CPA.com.
Okay.
So we're available however we can make it convenient for people. We should be opening our office doors up pretty soon. I had taken the stance of closing the doors to the public to try to alleviate the contact with the staff that wanted to continue staying in the office. We had several of us that had to leave due to different reasons. But that has left the opportunity for those people that don't have email access or the understanding to do electronic versions of their tax returns and signatures. That way they can feel comfortable walking into our office knowing that we're just not a revolving door right now. So we've been accommodating people in that manner. People are dropping off paperwork to us constantly. We have a mailbox out on the road that's very large and it locks. So they'll drop their stuff off in that mailbox since we're not receiving mail in it currently due to the construction. Right. And then we also have a portal that people can upload documents to. So if they need a link to our portal, all they have to do is email us and we can send them a link to our portal and they can upload their documents directly there.
Okay, great. Amy, any final questions?
No, I think that's all great, helpful information that I think will help our community a lot.
Yeah, I think so. And I definitely want to thank Monica for taking the time to do this and also serving on the board. She's served on the board for a number of years and helps watch over kind of the financial health of the chamber and is always taking my questions as well. So I appreciate that.
No problem. I'm happy to be in this community.
Right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Chamber Chatter podcast with Monica Kirk. I'm Dr. Robert Moss signing off, and for Amy Walker, thank you. If you have any questions about the Springtown Chamber or how we can help your local business, please contact us at 817-220-7828. Thank you.